She collapsed behind the diner counter at the stroke of midnight, 3 newborn infants nestled in a basket beside her. The man who caught her was perhaps the least likely person to offer assistance, a mafia boss attempting to evade trouble himself. Yet, upon seeing those tiny, innocent faces, something within him compelled him to act. The neon sign of Rosie's diner hummed and flickered, casting bizarre shadows across the deserted parking area. Adrian Moretti glanced at his watch. 12:47 a.m. Blood still marred the cuff of his crisp white shirt, concealed beneath his black suit jacket. The arms deal had spiraled out of control in the worst imaginable way, and now nearly the entire city's police force was scouring the industrial district in search of him. "Boss, we should move," Lucas said from the driver's seat, his knuckles stark white as they gripped the steering wheel. Adrienne's icy gray gaze scanned the diner through the rain-streaked window. 5 minutes. I need coffee and they need time to lose our trail. The bell above the entrance jingled as Adrian entered, followed by 2 of his men. The diner reeked of stale coffee and aged grease. A lone waitress stood behind the counter, her back to them, her shoulders trembling almost imperceptibly. She wore a faded pink uniform that had clearly seen better days. "We're closing soon," she said without turning around, her voice barely a whisper. "Coffee? Black. 3 cups," Adrian said, sliding into a booth near the exit. Always near the exit. Old habits die hard. The waitress turned slowly, and Adrienne's seasoned eyes assessed every detail in mere seconds. Early 20s, utterly exhausted, dark circles beneath her eyes that even makeup couldn't conceal, and a name tag that read, Clara. But what struck him most was her vulnerability. She looked as though she hadn't slept in days, perhaps even weeks. Clara nodded mechanically and reached for the coffee pot. Her hand trembled. "Miss, you all right?" Luca asked, his voice unusually gentle for a man who'd broken 3 fingers just an hour prior. "Fine," Clara whispered, but her legs faltered slightly. She steadied herself on the counter, her knuckles turning white. Adrienne's instincts, honed by 2 decades of reading people, of recognizing when someone was on the verge of breaking, screamed at him. He rose to his feet just as Clara's eyes rolled back. She crumpled. Adrian moved quicker than his men, catching her before her head collided with the tiled floor. "Call Doc Reynolds." Now he barked at Luca, cradling Clara's unconscious form. She weighed next to nothing, all bones and weariness. That's when he heard it. A whimper, a soft mewing coming from behind the counter. Marco, his other guard, went to investigate. "Boss, you need to see this." Adrian gently placed Clara on the floor, using his jacket as a makeshift pillow, and moved behind the counter. The sight that greeted him froze him in his tracks. Something that hadn't happened since he'd watched his father die 15 years ago. A wicker basket, the type one might use for a picnic. Inside, swaddled in mismatched blankets, 1 pink, 1 blue, 1 yellow, were 3 tiny babies, newborns. Their faces were flushed from crying, their little fists waving in the air. "Madonna, Santa," Marco breathed, crossing himself. Adrienne's mind raced. A waitress, 3 newborns. An empty diner at almost 1 a.m. This wasn't right. Nothing about this felt right. He knelt beside the basket, and one of the babies, wrapped in the blue blanket, stopped crying, gazing up at him with unfocused dark eyes. Something stirred in Adrienne's chest, an unfamiliar sensation. He immediately suppressed it. "What do we do, boss?" Luca asked, phone in hand. Adrian glanced at Clara's unconscious form, then at the 3 helpless infants, then at his men who'd killed without a second thought, who'd tortured for information, who'd torched buildings to deliver messages. He made a decision that would have stunned anyone familiar with his reputation. "We take them. All of them. Get Doc Reynolds to meet us at the private clinic. No hospitals, no questions, and absolutely no police. Boss, we can't just..." Did I stutter? Adrienne's voice dropped to that dangerously quiet tone that made grown men flinch. "Get the car now." As his men scrambled, Adrian cautiously lifted the wicker basket. The babies quieted, as if sensing the change in energy. He looked down at them. 3 little lives abandoned or hidden in a diner in the dead of night. Then he looked at Clara, still unconscious, her breathing shallow. Something was deeply amiss here, and Adrian Moretti had built an empire on his ability to detect trouble before it struck. This situation reeked of it, but as he carried the basket toward the exit, the baby in blue grasped his finger with surprising strength, and Adrian felt something he hadn't experienced in years: responsibility. Not for territory, money, or power, but for something innocent. "Boss, what about the diner? Someone's going to notice," Marco began. "Lock the back door. Leave the front unlocked. Make it appear she stepped out. We were never here." Adrian's eyes swept the interior one last time, his mind already cataloging details, searching for clues. A purse behind the counter, worn and nearly empty. A time card showing Clara had worked a double shift. And on a small table in the back corner, barely visible, a baby bottle and a half-eaten sandwich. She'd probably been too exhausted to finish it. She'd been here alone, working, hiding 3 newborns in a diner. "Why?" Luca returned, carefully scooping Clara up. "Car's ready, boss." As they stepped out into the rain, Adrian shielded the basket with his body. The babies had finally fallen silent, trusting in a way that unsettled him. Behind him, Rosie's diner stood dark and vacant, its secrets departing in the arms of the city's most notorious man. Adrian Moretti had survived gang wars, federal investigations, and countless assassination attempts by trusting no one and asking questions later. But as he slid into the back seat, the basket of babies beside him and an unconscious waitress in Luca's arms, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had just stumbled into something far more dangerous than any arms deal. He had entered someone else's desperate story, and Adrian Moretti always finished what he started. The private clinic smelled of antiseptic and secrets. Dr. Reynolds, a gray-haired man who'd patched up more bullet wounds than he cared to remember, worked swiftly and asked no questions. That's why Adrian paid him a fortune. "The girl's severely malnourished and sleep-deprived," Reynolds said, checking Clara's vitals. "When did she last eat a proper meal or sleep more than 2 hours?" Adrian stood by the window, watching dawn break over the city. How long until she wakes? Could be an hour, could be 6. Her body's shutting down from exhaustion. Reynolds moved to the 3 bassinets where the babies slept, cleaned and fed by the clinic's discreet nursing staff. "The infants are healthy, maybe 3 or 4 days old, born full-term, good weight." Adrian turned, his eyes sharp. "Run a DNA test on all 3 babies. Cross-reference it with my family database." Reynolds's hand froze on his stethoscope. "Boss, that's not a request, doctor." 2 hours later, Adrian sat in Reynolds's office, a cup of untouched espresso growing cold. The doctor entered, his face pale, carrying a manila folder. "You're not going to like this," Reynolds said quietly. Adrian took the folder, opened it, and felt the world tilt beneath him. Match found. Daniel Moretti, 99. 9% paternity. His younger brother, the golden boy who'd smiled too readily and lied even more easily, the brother who'd vanished 6 months ago after stealing from the family and selling information to the Rossi syndicate, the brother Adrian had assumed was already dead. All 3. Adrienne's voice was dangerously calm. Triplets, same father, same mother. Reynolds hesitated. "There's more. The genetic markers suggest conception happened about 9 months ago, right around the time Daniel was still in the city." Adrienne's jaw clenched. "Before he betrayed us." A soft groan emanated from the examination room. Clara was waking up. Adrian stood, buttoning his suit jacket, his mind already racing through possibilities and threats. He entered the room to find Clara struggling to sit up, panic flooding her eyes. "The babies? Where are my—" She spotted them in their bassinets and nearly fell trying to reach them. "They're safe," Adrian said, his voice neutral. "Well-fed, clean, healthy." Clara spun to face him, and for the first time he saw her clearly in proper light. Young, yes, but with old eyes, the kind that had seen too much, survived too much. Her dark hair fell in tangled waves around her shoulders, and despite the exhaustion, there was a fierceness in her expression. "Who are you? Why did you bring us here?" Her arms wrapped protectively around herself. "Adrian Moretti." He watched her face carefully. Does that name mean anything to you? The color drained from her already pale face. Oh God, you're his brother. So she knew. Interesting. Tell me about Daniel, Adrian said, moving closer, not threatening, but commanding. Tell me everything. Clara's eyes darted to the door, locked. To the window, 3rd floor. To the babies, surrounded by strangers. She was trapped, and she knew it. I met him 8 months ago at the diner, she whispered. He came in every Tuesday and Thursday, always polite, always tipped well. We started talking, and he seemed different, kind. Adrian repeated the word, foreign on his tongue when applied to his brother. He said he wanted to leave his old life behind. Start fresh. Clara's voice cracked. I didn't know he was lying about everything. I didn't know he was what he was. When did he disappear? 3 months ago. I was 6 months pregnant. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He said he had to handle family business and would come back. He promised he'd come back. I waited. But Adrienne's mind calculated rapidly. 3 months ago was exactly when Daniel had stolen $500,000 from the family vault and vanished. When the Rossi syndicate had suddenly known the locations of 3 safe houses. When Adrian had barely survived an ambush that killed 5 of his men. Daniel hadn't just betrayed the family for money. He'd abandoned a pregnant woman carrying his children. Did he ever mention the Rossi family? Any names? Salvatore, Tony. Anyone? Adrian pressed. Clara shook her head, then stopped. Wait. Once, when he was drunk, he said something about insurance. That his blood would protect what he loved. She looked up at Adrian, understanding dawning in her eyes. He meant the babies. Oh God, he meant the babies. Adrienne's phone buzzed. A text from Luca. Rossi soldiers asking questions at the diner. They know. The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. Daniel had gotten Clara pregnant deliberately. 3 heirs to the Moretti bloodline, insurance against both families, leverage, a claim to power that the Rossi syndicate could manipulate. And now Clara and the babies were pawns in a game they didn't even know they were playing. You can't go back to your life, Adrian said flatly. The moment you walk out that door, you're dead. Those babies are dead. What? Clara's voice rose in panic. I have to work. I have rent. You have enemies now, my enemies, Daniel's enemies. Adrienne's gray eyes locked onto hers. There's only one place you'll be safe. Clara clutched the edge of the hospital bed. Where? With me. The villa sat on 10 acres of wooded property, surrounded by walls that could withstand a small army. Clara pressed her face against the car window, watching the iron gates close behind them with a heavy clang that sounded like a prison door. This is insane, she whispered, holding the baby in the blue blanket. She'd started calling him Leo in her mind. The other 2, wrapped in pink and yellow, slept in specially installed car seats. I can't just live with a mafia boss. You can and you will, Adrian said from the front seat, not looking back. Unless you prefer a bullet. The car stopped in front of a sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion. Beautiful, Clara thought distantly, and terrifying. A woman in her 50s appeared at the entrance, stern-faced, gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Mr. Moretti, I've prepared the East Wing as requested. Thank you, Maria. Adrian stepped out, then surprised Clara by opening her door himself. Maria runs the household. You need anything, ask her. Maria's sharp eyes swept over Clara and the babies, her expression unreadable. 3 infants will need supplies, diapers, formula, cribs. Get whatever they need. Price doesn't matter. Adrienne's voice was clipped. And Maria, she doesn't leave the property. No visitors, no phone calls unless I clear them first. Clara's stomach dropped. Wait, I can't call anyone. My landlord, my boss. Your landlord will receive 3 months' rent by tomorrow. Your boss will be told you had a family emergency out of state. Adrian finally looked at her directly. You don't exist anymore, Clara. Not until I say otherwise. He walked into the house, leaving her standing there with Maria. The older woman's expression softened slightly. Call me if the babies need anything. The East Wing was larger than Clara's entire apartment had been, 3 rooms. A master bedroom with an attached bathroom, and 2 smaller rooms already being converted into a nursery by staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Clara laid the babies down on the massive bed, afraid to let them out of her sight. Through the window, she could see armed guards patrolling the grounds. A prison, a beautiful, expensive prison. "Dinner is at 7 o'clock, Maria said from the doorway. "Mr. Moretti expects you." The dining room could have seated 20. Adrian sat at the head of an absurdly long table, reading something on his tablet. He changed into a black shirt, sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms marked with scars Clara didn't want to think about. She stood in the doorway, still wearing her rumpled diner uniform, feeling completely out of place. "Sit," Adrian said without looking up. Clara chose a seat 3 chairs away. Staff appeared with plates of food, real food, the kind she'd only seen in magazines. Roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, bread that smelled like heaven. Her stomach growled traitorously. "Eat," Adrian commanded, finally setting down his tablet. "You're no use to those babies if you starve." "Why are you doing this?" Clara asked, not touching the food. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Adrienne's gray eyes studied her with an intensity that made her want to shrink back. "Those babies share my blood. That makes them Morettis, and I protect what's mine." "They're not yours," Clara said, sudden anger flaring. "They're mine. Carried them. And Daniel's," Adrian interrupted coldly, "which makes them targets. Do you understand what that means?" Clara's hands clenched in her lap. "I understand your brother lied to me, used me. I understand I was stupid enough to believe him. You were naive, not stupid." Adrienne's voice lost some of its edge. "Daniel was good at making people believe what he wanted them to believe. You're not the first." Something in his tone made Clara look up. There was history there, old wounds. "What did he do to you?" she asked quietly. "Betrayed the family, got good men killed." Adrian picked up his wine glass, swirled it, sold us out to our enemies for money and a promise of protection that was always going to be a lie. "Then why do you think the Rossi family wants the babies?" "Because Daniel made a deal with them before he ran, blood for power." Adrienne's jaw tightened. 3 Moretti heirs. In our world, lineage is everything. Clara felt sick. "So I'm just an incubator and my babies are just pawns." "To them, yes." Adrian set down his glass with deliberate care. "To me, they're leverage I won't let anyone else have." The honesty was brutal, but Clara appreciated it more than false comfort. "How long do I have to stay here until it's safe?" "Could be weeks, could be months." Adrian stood, straightening his cuffs. "I suggest you get comfortable. And if I refuse, if I just walk out?" Adrian moved closer, and Clara forced herself not to flinch. He leaned down, his voice quiet and absolutely certain. "Then by tomorrow morning you'll be in a Rossi basement, and those babies will disappear into a system designed to erase identities. Is that what you want?" Tears burned Clara's eyes, but she blinked them back. "No, then eat your dinner, get some rest. Tomorrow we start figuring out how to keep all of you alive." He left her alone in the massive dining room, surrounded by luxury she'd never wanted, trapped in a life she'd never chosen. Clara looked down at the food and finally, desperately, began to eat. 3 days in the villa felt like 3 years. Clara had barely seen Adrian. He was always in his study, on the phone, or disappearing in black SUVs with his men. But she felt his presence everywhere, in the guards who watched her window, in Maria's carefully worded questions, in the way the staff avoided eye contact. On the 4th morning, Clara found Adrian in the nursery. He stood over the cribs, staring down at the sleeping triplets with an expression she couldn't decipher. "They have his eyes," he said without turning. "Daniel's eyes, our mother's eyes." Clara stayed in the doorway, suddenly aware she was in a tank top and sweatpants Maria had provided. "You never talk about your family." "Nothing to talk about. Mother died when I was 12. Father raised us in the business." Adrienne's fingers gripped the crib rail. "He always liked Daniel better. Said I was too cold, too calculating. Daniel had charm, warmth, everything a leader needed. But you became the boss," Clara said softly, "because charm doesn't stop bullets. Warmth doesn't build empires." Adrian finally looked at her. "Daniel was weak where it mattered. He wanted the power without the responsibility, the respect without the sacrifice. Is that why he ran? Adrienne's laugh was bitter. He ran because I discovered he'd been feeding information to Salvatore Rossi for 6 months. Meeting him in secret, planning something bigger than just stealing money. Clara moved closer, drawn despite herself. What was he planning? That's what I need to find out. Adrian pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. Recognize this? It was Daniel, handsome, smiling, with those dark eyes she'd fallen for. But he wasn't alone. Next to him sat a hard-looking man in an expensive suit, and between them on the table was a document. That's Salvatore Rossi. Photo was taken 8 months ago at a restaurant in Little Italy. Adrian zoomed in on the document. Can't read all of it, but see that word? Clara's blood ran cold. Insurance. He knew. Even then, he knew about you being pregnant, maybe, or maybe he planned it from the start. Adrienne's voice was matter-of-fact, but Clara heard the anger underneath. Daniel never did anything without 3 backup plans. I can't believe I was that stupid, Clara whispered, sinking into the rocking chair. He played me perfectly, said all the right things, made all the right promises. You said he mentioned protecting what he loved, Adrian said, putting away his phone. Tell me exactly what he said. Every word. Clara closed her eyes, remembering. It was late, maybe 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd been drinking whiskey. I think he got emotional, said he was doing something dangerous but necessary, that his blood would be insurance, would protect everything precious to him when the time came. Insurance, Adrian repeated, pacing now, not protection. Insurance, that's different. How? Protection means keeping you safe. Insurance means using you as leverage. Adrian stopped at the window. He was building a failsafe. If things went wrong with the Rossi deal, he'd have 3 Moretti babies as bargaining chips. If things went right, he'd have heirs to claim both territories, ours through blood, theirs through alliance. Clara felt nauseous. What kind of person thinks like that about their own children? The kind raised in this world. Adrian turned to face her. But here's what doesn't make sense. Why disappear? If the babies were his insurance, why abandon you? Maybe he got scared. Daniel doesn't get scared, he gets clever. Adrienne's eyes narrowed. Unless something went wrong, unless the Rossi family double-crossed him first. A knock at the door interrupted them. Luca entered, his face grim. Boss, we have something. One of our informants saw Daniel 2 weeks ago in Chicago. Clara gasped. He's alive. Very much alive, Luca continued, and apparently in hiding, using a fake name, staying in a dumpy motel, looking over his shoulder every 5 seconds. Adrienne's expression hardened. So he's running from someone, from us or from them. Both probably, Luca said. But here's the interesting part. He's been making calls, asking about a waitress and 3 babies, trying to find out if they're safe. Clara stood abruptly. He's looking for us. After abandoning me for 3 months, he suddenly cares? Or he finally realized his insurance was born and needs to collect, Adrian said darkly. He turned to Luca. Put word on the street, a controlled leak. Let it slip, the babies are here under my protection. Boss, that's drawing him out. If Daniel wants his children, he'll have to come to me. Adrienne's smile was predatory. And when he does, we'll get answers. Clara felt torn. Part of her wanted to see Daniel, to demand explanations, to scream at him for everything he'd done. Another part never wanted to see him again. What if he brings the Rossi family with him? She asked. Adrian walked to the door, pausing to look back at her. Then we'll be ready. This villa has survived 3 siege attempts, it'll survive a 4th. You and me, the babies, will be in the safe room, bulletproof and underground, until it's over. His gray eyes softened almost imperceptibly. I told you, Clara. I protect what's mine. He left before she could argue that she wasn't his, that the babies weren't his. But as she looked down at the sleeping triplets, innocent lives caught in a war they didn't ask for, Clara realized protection was protection, whatever the reason behind it. And right now, Adrian Moretti was all that stood between her children and whatever nightmare Daniel had created. The package arrived at dawn. Clara woke to shouting outside her window, guards yelling, doors slamming. The sound of Adrienne's voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. She grabbed her robe and ran to the nursery, her heart pounding, checking each crib. All 3 babies slept peacefully, unaware of the danger. Maria appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Stay inside. Lock the door. Don't come out until Mr. Moretti says so." "What's happening?" But Maria was already gone. 20 minutes later, Adrian knocked. A sharp, controlled sound despite whatever rage Clara knew was simmering underneath. She opened the door to find him standing there in yesterday's clothes, his jaw tight, a muscle ticking in his cheek. "Show me the babies," he said. "They're fine. They're sleeping. Show me." His voice cracked like a whip. Clara stepped aside, watching as Adrian moved to each crib, his hands hovering over the sleeping infants as if reassuring himself they were real, whole, untouched. When he finished, he sagged slightly against the wall. "What happened?" Clara whispered. Adrian pulled something from his pocket. A charred piece of fabric, yellow with scorched edges. Clara's stomach dropped. The yellow blanket, one of the triplets' original blankets from the diner, lay on the doorstep. Adrian's voice was dead calm, almost detached as he stated, "The real heirs belong with their real family." Clara's legs buckled beneath her. She steadied herself, grabbing onto the dresser. "They know. They know about the babies. They've known for days." "I expected this," Adrian said, pocketing the burned fabric. "What I didn't anticipate was how quickly they'd move. The Rossi family is growing desperate." "Desperate for what?" she asked. "Power. Control. My territory." Adrian moved to the window, peering cautiously through the curtains. "Salvatore Rossi has been trying to merge with the Moretti family for 20 years. First through negotiations, then through violence, and now through blood. Raising 3 Moretti babies in his household would give him a legitimate claim to everything my father built." Clara wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. "So what are we going to do?" "I'm moving you all to the safe room tonight. It's deeper within the compound, constructed of reinforced concrete. Separate air supply. Emergency exit tunnel." Adrian turned to face her. "You'll hate it. No windows. Limited space. But you'll be alive. For how long? Days? Weeks? We can't hide forever." "Adrian, we won't have to," she insisted. "I'm ending this." His expression turned cold and calculating. The Mafia boss was fully present now, not the man who gently checked on sleeping babies. "I've already called a meeting with my captains. We're going to war." Luca entered without waiting for permission, his face etched with urgency. "Boss, we have a problem. This Vittorio." Adrienne's jaw clenched. "What about him?" "He's calling for a family council. Says the babies are a liability, that the girl—" Luca glanced at Clara uncomfortably. "That she should be removed quietly." The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. "Vittorio said that?" Adrian repeated softly, too softly. "He's got Giacomo and Paolo backing him. They're saying you're compromised. That protecting Daniel's bastards is weakness." Luca shifted his weight uneasily. "Boss, they're questioning your leadership." Clara felt like she'd been punched in the gut. "They want to kill me, kill the babies. They want to eliminate the problem before the Rossi family uses it against us," Luca explained, not unkindly. "In our world, it's not personal." "Not personal?" Clara's voice rose in disbelief. "They're talking about murdering 3 infants, which is exactly why it won't happen," Adrian said, his voice cutting through her panic. "Luca, call the council for tonight. 8 p.m. War room." "Boss, if you oppose them publicly, they'll know where I stand," Luca said, concerned. Adrienne's eyes were steel. "Anyone who touches these children answers to me. Anyone who even thinks about touching Clara will wish they'd never been born." After Luca left, silence hung heavy in the air. Clara stared at Adrian, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not just a protector, not just a captor, but a man walking a tightrope between his world's brutal logic and something he couldn't quite name. "Why?" she asked. "Why risk everything for us? You said it yourself. We're Daniel's mess, not yours." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, staring at the cribs. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "When I was 7, my mother was pregnant. She was going to name him Marco. My little brother. He swallowed hard. One of my father's enemies found out. They sent a message by running her car off the road. She survived, but the baby didn't. Clara's breath caught in her throat. My father never recovered. He became harder, colder. Taught us that family was everything, but also that showing weakness for family would get them killed. Adrian finally looked at her, his gaze intense. I swore then that if I ever had the power, no child under my protection would die because of this life. Not ever. Adrian, I failed Marco. I won't fail Leo, Sophia, and Dante. He used the names Clara had been calling them. Names he'd somehow learned, even if it costs me everything. Before Clara could respond, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Adrienne's hand went to the gun at his hip. That's not the power. That's the perimeter alarm. Footsteps pounded in the hallway. Gunshots cracked in the distance. Get the babies, Adrian commanded, moving toward the door. Safe room now. Maria knows the way. What's happening? She asked, her voice trembling. Adrienne's smile was sharp and dangerous. The Rossi family just made their first move. Time to show them why nobody attacks a Moretti compound and lives to regret it. He disappeared into the hallway, and Clara heard him shouting orders, the sound of men mobilizing for war. She looked at the 3 sleeping babies, innocent and unaware, and she ran. The safe room was everything Adrian had promised. Concrete walls, a reinforced steel door, and absolutely suffocating. Clara had been locked inside with Maria and the babies for 6 hours. 6 hours of listening to muffled gunfire, of jumping at every distant explosion, of trying to keep 3 infants calm while her own heart raced a mile a minute. It's quiet now, Maria said, checking her watch. That's either very good or very bad. Clara paced the small space, each baby strapped into portable carriers. Leo watched her with those dark Moretti eyes, while Sophia and Dante slept fitfully. How can you stand living like this? She asked Maria. You get used to it, Maria said, though her hands trembled slightly as she poured water from their emergency supply. This is the 4th lockdown in 10 years. Mr. Moretti always wins. Always, always, Clara thought, until the time he doesn't. A knock on the door. 3 short knocks, then a pause, then a longer knock. Maria's shoulders relaxed. That's Mr. Moretti's signal. She moved to unlock it. Adrian entered. Blood was spattered on his shirt, and he had a cut above his eyebrow, but he was alive. His eyes immediately found Clara. You're okay. We're fine, she said, relieved. What happened? 12 Rossi soldiers tried to breach the north wall. They won't try again, he said, his tone making it clear why. But we have a problem. Dr. Reynolds was supposed to check the babies today. Their 1-week checkup. We can't keep rescheduling without raising questions. Clara frowned, worried. So what do you suggest? Supervised visit tomorrow. City Park. Public enough that the Rossi family won't risk a spectacle. Private enough that we can control the situation. Adrienne's jaw tightened. I don't like it, but the babies need a doctor's clearance. After what just happened, you want to take them outside. Clara's voice rose in disbelief. I want them healthy, and I want to draw out whoever's been feeding information to the Rossi family. Adrienne's eyes darkened. Someone inside my organization told them about the babies. I need to know who. The park was beautiful. Spring flowers, families on blankets, the sound of children laughing. Almost normal, almost safe. Clara sat on a bench with Sophia in her arms while Dr. Reynolds examined Leo and Dante in their stroller. 4 of Adrienne's guards surrounded them, trying to look casual. Adrian himself stood 20 feet away, talking on the phone, but his eyes never left the babies. They're thriving, Reynolds said, smiling. Weight gain is perfect. No signs of distress. You're doing an excellent job, Clara. For the first time in days, Clara felt something like pride. I'm trying. More than trying. These little ones are lucky. Reynolds froze, his eyes widening at something over Clara's shoulder. Clara turned. 3 men in maintenance uniforms were moving toward them, walking too purposefully, their hands hidden. One of Adrienne's guards noticed, reaching for his weapon. Gunfire erupted. The park exploded into chaos. Screaming families, people running, guards returning fire. Clara dove behind the bench, clutching Sophia, her body curving protectively over the baby. Reynolds grabbed the stroller, trying to shield Leo and Dante. Clara. Adrienne's voice cut through the noise. She looked up to see him sprinting toward her, gun drawn, taking down one attacker with 2 precise shots. The fourth man, where had he come from, lunged for the stroller. Reynolds tried to stop him, but the man pistol-whipped him across the face. The doctor went down hard. No! Clara screamed. The man grabbed the stroller's handle, yanking it. Leo started crying, a piercing wail that cut straight to Clara's soul. She didn't think, she just moved. Clara launched herself at the man, still holding Sophia, hitting him with her full weight. They crashed to the ground, Sophia wailing now, too. And Clara's only thought was, protect them, protect them, protect them. The man's fist connected with her jaw. Stars exploded across her vision. She felt Sophia being ripped from her arms, heard herself screaming. A gunshot deafeningly close. The man collapsed, a red bloom spreading across his chest. Adrian stood over them, smoke curling from his gun barrel, his expression absolutely murderous. Touch them again, he said to the dying man, and I'll make sure hell looks like paradise. More gunshots. Adrienne's men had the situation contained. 2 attackers dead, 1 fleeing, the 4th bleeding out at their feet. Adrian holstered his weapon and immediately gathered Sophia from where she'd rolled onto the grass, miraculously unharmed. Clara, he knelt beside her, cradling Sophia in one arm while his other hand gently touched Clara's swelling jaw. Look at me. She did. His gray eyes weren't cold anymore. They were blazing with something fierce and protective and utterly genuine. You threw yourself at an armed man, he said almost in disbelief. You could have been killed. He had my baby, Clara whispered, tasting blood. I wasn't letting him take my baby. Something shifted in Adrienne's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition, the acknowledgement of a mother's love that transcended fear. I know, he said softly, then louder to his men. Get them back to the compound now and find out how the Rossi family knew we'd be here. As they rushed to the cars, Clara holding Leo and Dante while Adrian carried Sophia, she realized something that should have terrified her. She trusted him. This dangerous, violent man who'd killed 3 people in front of her without hesitation. She trusted him to protect her children because he'd proven he would die trying. And in the back of the SUV, as Adrian personally strapped each baby into their car seats with unexpected gentleness, Clara understood that she'd just witnessed something the Mafia world would never believe. Adrian Moretti had found something worth more than power. He just didn't know it yet. The abandoned cathedral loomed against the night sky, its stained-glass windows dark and hollow. Adrian stood in the center of the nave, moonlight filtering through broken panes, casting fractured colors across the stone floor. Behind him, 6 armed men waited in the shadows. You sure he'll come? Luca asked quietly. He'll come. Adrian checked his watch. Midnight sharp. He wants something. He always wants something. At precisely midnight, the heavy wooden doors creaked open. A figure emerged from the darkness, thinner than Adrian remembered, haunted, but unmistakably Daniel Moretti. Hello, brother, Daniel said, his voice hoarse. He raised his hands, showing he was unarmed. I came alone like you asked. Adrienne's hand rested on his gun. The last time I saw you, you'd stolen $500,000 and gotten 5 of my men killed. Give me one reason not to put a bullet in your head right now, because I can tell you exactly what Salvatore Rossi is planning. Daniel's voice cracked. And because I want to know if my children are safe. Now you care? Adrienne's voice dripped venom. After abandoning their mother, after setting them up as pawns in your twisted game? I didn't abandon them. I was protecting them. Daniel took a step forward. Adrienne's men shifted, weapons rising. Daniel froze. Everything I did was to keep Clara and the babies safe. By making deals with the Rossi family, by disappearing for 3 months. Adrian moved closer, his anger tightly controlled. Explain now. Daniel's shoulders sagged in the moonlight. He looked 10 years older than his 28 years. Started 2 years ago. Father told me I'd never be boss, that you were always the chosen one. I was angry, stupid. Salvatore approached me at a casino, said he could help me prove myself. So, you betrayed your family for your ego, Adrian said, disgusted. I betrayed my family because I was tired of being invisible. Daniel's voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Everything was always about you. Adrian the strategist. Adrian the leader. I was just the charming spare. Get to Clara, Adrian said coldly. Get to my nieces and nephew. Daniel flinched at the possessive my. I met her by accident. She was real. Adrian, genuine in a way no one in our world ever is. I fell for her. Truly fell for her. But by then, I was already deep with Salvatore. And the pregnancy was real, unplanned. When I found out, Daniel's hands shook. I panicked. I knew Salvatore would see them as leverage, so I made a deal. I'd give him information, access to our supply routes, in exchange for a guarantee that Clara and the babies would never be touched. Adrian laughed bitterly. You actually believed him? I wanted to believe him, but 3 months ago, I overheard Salvatore talking to his captains. They were planning to take the babies the moment they were born, raise them as Rossi soldiers, use them to claim Moretti territory. Daniel's voice broke. I tried to warn Clara, but Salvatore's men were already watching her. I couldn't go near her without putting a target on her back. So you ran, Adrian said, like a coward. I ran to protect them. If Salvatore thought I didn't care about Clara or the babies, he'd have no reason to use them against me. Tears streamed down Daniel's face. I've been hiding in Chicago trying to find proof of his plan. Something I could use to what? Trade? Negotiate? Adrienne's voice turned to ice. You don't have leverage anymore, Daniel. Those children are under my protection now. Clara is under my roof. You gave up any claim when you disappeared. They're my children, Adrian. My blood. Blood you were willing to gamble with. Adrian pulled out his phone, showing Daniel a photo of Clara asleep in a chair. All 3 babies nestled against her, safe and fed and loved. She thinks you used her, that you never cared. Daniel stared at the photo, fresh tears falling. I love her. I love them. Everything I did was selfish. Everything you did was selfish. Adrian pocketed the phone. You wanted to play both sides. Be the hero in your own story. But the only thing you accomplished was putting innocent lives at risk. What are you going to do? Daniel whispered, fear evident in his tone. Kill me? Adrian studied his brother, the golden boy who'd fallen so far. Part of him wanted to pull the trigger to eliminate the threat, to erase this failure of Moretti blood. But another part, the part that had spent a week watching Clara sing to babies who looked like his mother, hesitated. I should, Adrian said finally. But I won't. Not yet. Then what? You're going to tell me everything. Every contact, every meeting, every promise Salvatore made. You're going to help me dismantle his organization from the inside. Adrienne's eyes were hard. And when it's over, you're going to sign papers giving me full legal guardianship of those children. Adrian, please. Those are my terms. Non-negotiable. Adrian moved closer until they were face to face. You don't get to be their father. You lost that right. But you can make sure they're safe. That Clara is safe. This is the only redemption you're getting. Daniel's face crumpled. Can I at least see them? Just once. Adrian considered it. Every instinct said no. But he thought of Clara, of her right to know the truth, to face the man who'd hurt her. One meeting. Supervised. At the compound. Adrienne's voice held a warning. You say anything to upset Clara, you make one wrong move toward those babies, and brother or not, you're dead. Understood? Daniel nodded, broken. Understood. Good. Adrian turned to Luca. Take him to the safe house. Get everything he knows about Rossi's operation. We move in 48 hours. As Daniel was led away, he called back, Adrian, thank you for protecting them. Adrian didn't turn around. I'm not doing it for you. Alone in the cathedral, Adrian stared up at the broken windows, at the fractured light that never quite made whole pictures. He had spent his life protecting the Moretti Empire. Now he was protecting something far more fragile, and God help anyone who tried to take it from him. The war lasted 3 days. Adrian's men, armed with Daniel's intelligence, struck 12 Rossi locations simultaneously. Safe houses, money laundering operations, weapon caches. Salvatore Rossi himself was arrested by federal agents after anonymous tips revealed his involvement in international arms trafficking. The remaining Rossi captains scattered like roaches when the lights came on. By the third night, it was over. Clara stood on the villa's terrace, watching the sun set over the manicured grounds. Weeks had passed since that terrifying day in the park. Weeks of waiting, worrying, and slowly, possibly, beginning to feel something like safe. "You should be resting," Adrian said, appearing beside her with that silent way he had. He'd showered recently, looking almost normal in jeans and a dark shirt. The violence of the past days washed away, but not forgotten. "The babies are asleep. Maria's watching them." Clara glanced at him. The cut above his eyebrow had healed into a thin scar. "Is it really over? The Rossi threat?" "Yes. Salvatore will die in prison. His organization is finished." Adrian leaned against the railing. "There will always be someone else. Another threat. But for now, you're safe." "Safe enough to leave?" Clara asked quietly, the question hanging in the air. Adrien's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching in his cheek. "Is that what you want?" Clara didn't answer immediately. A month ago, the answer would have been a desperate yes. Now, watching the gardens where she'd started taking the babies for fresh air, thinking of Maria's gentle guidance and the secure walls that had become less like a prison and more like a sanctuary, she didn't know. "Daniel wants to see them," Adrian said, changing the subject. "He's been asking every day. I've been putting him off, but—" He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "It's your decision. Your choice if he gets to meet his children." Clara's hands clenched the railing. "What do you think I should do?" "I think he's a coward who doesn't deserve them. But I also think—" Adrian paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think you deserve closure. And maybe someday those children will have questions about their father. Would you be there during the meeting? I wouldn't let you face him alone." Adrienne's voice held a promise. "And Clara, he's signed the guardianship papers. Legally, I'm their guardian now. He can't take them, can't claim them. All he can do is ask for your forgiveness." Tears stung Clara's eyes. "I don't know if I can forgive him." "Then don't. You don't owe him anything." Adrienne's hand covered hers on the railing. Warm, solid, real. "But you're stronger than you know. Strong enough to throw yourself at a gunman. Strong enough to survive this life for a month without breaking. Whatever you decide about Daniel, you'll be okay." Clara looked at their hands, his scarred and deadly, hers small and trembling, and realized when they'd started touching like this. Small moments. Adrian handing her a bottle, their fingers brushing, him adjusting a blanket over Sophia, his arm grazing Clara's shoulder. The accidental intimacy of two people orbiting the same three tiny lives. "I'll see him," Clara decided. "Once. Then I want him gone." Adrian nodded, understanding. "Tomorrow, then. I'll arrange it." Daniel's meeting with his children lasted 15 minutes. He cried when he held them, whispered apologies Clara couldn't hear, and looked at her with such desperate longing she almost felt pity. "Almost. I'm sorry," Daniel said as Adrienne's men prepared to take him away to a new identity. A new life far from the Mafia world. Part of his deal for everything. "I know you'll never forgive me. But Clara, thank you for keeping them safe." "I didn't keep them safe," Clara said coldly. "He did." She nodded toward Adrian, who stood silently by the door. "Your brother did what you couldn't." Daniel left without another word. 3 weeks later, Clara found Adrian in the nursery at 2 a.m. He'd been there more often lately, particularly with Leo, who had trouble sleeping. The baby was cradled against Adrienne's chest, finally quiet, while Adrian read from a book in Italian. Old fairy tales, Maria had explained. "You're good with them," Clara said softly from the doorway. Adrian looked up, not embarrassed to be caught. "They're easy. They don't lie. Don't betray. They just need." "And you like being needed," Clara observed. "I like protecting them," Adrian said, standing carefully, placing Leo in his crib. "I like knowing they're safe because of me, not despite me." Clara moved into the room, checking on Sophia and Dante. Maria says the East Wing is officially mine now that you've redecorated. You've been sleeping in a guest room for 2 months, Adrian said, his voice gruff. You needed a real home, for however long you stay. What if I wanted to stay? Clara asked, the question surprising even herself. Not because I'm trapped, but because I chose to. Adrian went very still. Why would you choose this life? Because this life has you in it, Clara said, the truth spilling out. You who've protected 3 children who aren't even yours. You who've given me safety when I had nothing. You who read Italian fairy tales at 2 a.m. to a baby who can't even understand them yet. Clara, I'm not good at this, at feelings, at family, at anything that isn't strategy and violence. I'm not asking for promises, she interrupted. I'm not asking for love or some fairy tale ending. I'm just saying I'd like to stay. Build something here. Let the babies grow up knowing they're protected. Wanted. Adrian crossed the space between them in 2 strides, his hands cupping her face with surprising gentleness. You think I don't love you? That I haven't fallen for the woman who fought a gunman with a baby in her arms? Who survived my world without losing her softness? Clara's breath caught. Adrian, His thumb brushed her cheek. But these past 2 months, watching you with them, watching you bloom instead of break. Clara, you've become everything I didn't know I needed. He kissed her then, soft and careful. Like she was something precious. Like she was worth more than empires. When they pulled apart, Leo started fussing. They both laughed, the moment breaking into something real and domestic and perfect. So, we're doing this? Clara asked, picking up Leo, building a family in a Mafia compound. Adrian gathered Sophia, who'd woken sympathetically. We're doing this. Unconventional, dangerous, probably insane, but ours. Through the nursery window, dawn broke over the villa grounds. Guards still patrolled. Walls still stood high. The world outside remained dangerous. But inside, in a room filled with cribs and soft lullabies, a new kind of family took its first real breath. A Mafia boss who'd learned that true power was protecting what you loved. A waitress who discovered she was stronger than any fear. And 3 babies who'd never know how close they'd come to being pawns because they'd be raised as something better. They'd be raised as loved. The end.